Just a short question. Dr. Harris and John, Sam Condor, it's nice having you here. Enjoyed your presentation and learned a lot. But when I make decisions, I like to make decisions on a clear head, with a clear head. And Dr. Harris, we would like to believe that what brought you to this point because you made certain demands which weren't met. I think you know what I'm referring to. I hope you do.
No, well, maybe you should be clear. Let's assume.
Well, I understand there was some meeting that took place and you demanded a certain position. I just wonder if you can clarify that with us, so we know what went down, if you could please.
Yeah.
Not putting you on the spot.
No, that's...
You've also been accused of joining with others incentives that did not really have the have been proven to disregard the poor man in the island. So you are going with the certain people who weren't interested in the ongoing. I'm going to say what I heard.
Can you keep the question short?
Okay. Yes, the people in your coalition, I understand, are not really people that you really said they are, or who you think are.
Nonsense. He was talking to Dougie. Is Dougie tell you something? Don't listen to Dougie.
For that question, the issue which you raised regarding what the Prime Minister said, I would just want to caution all of us that whenever the Prime Minister speaks,
He lies.
it was a High Court judge that said that he was a stranger to the truth. When a judge says that of a Prime Minister, if it were in Canada or in the UK, that Prime Minister would have resigned the same day. That is the nature of how those democracies work. That a High Court judge can't make such a profoundly negative statement with regard to a Prime Minister, and that Prime Minister would survive when the judge said you are a liar. Because when he said you are a stranger to the truth, he's just using figurative language. You tell too much lie. And so with that caution, I want to say to you that when the Prime Minister says Timothy Harris came into my office and demanded I make him the Prime Minister, well, you must know I'm not a crazy man. You must know I'm not a delusional man. And you must know that the Prime Minister is doing his usual lie. I went to the Prime Minister's office on his invitation. He called me to his office to discuss what was happening in the country. We had a period of tenseness happening. He had aborted the Parliament because he was not sure he could have had the budget passed. And then the motion of no confidence basically was filed. And I went to speak to the Prime Minister with a witness who came to my house, because on that day I wasn't going into Bastille. The witness came to my house, asked me to come to go to see the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister wanted to see me. I was not minded to go, because I am aware how cunning the Prime Minister is and that he plays with people's mind. He will tell you one thing today, and before the day out anyway, he sees another person, he tells them an absolutely different thing. Sam is here as a living witness.
Me too.
And so I went in, and in fact, I will call his name. Wendell Watley, Postmaster General and former head teacher, was the one who took me into Bastille with the person who had come to say the Prime Minister wanted to see me urgently to discuss what was happening in the country and in government. I went to my office. The gentleman, in fact I went to Sam before, when the Watley dropped me there, I said, listen, I'm not going to meet with the Prime Minister alone. Too much is happening. I will let Sam know. Because I know the Prime Minister is such a dangerous liar. He would say to Sam that I come to him to make a side deal. So when the Watley, and I'm calling his name because he's still alive, took me to Birdrock, and then we went down Church Street, and the gentleman came. I went to my office, I called the gentleman, and we went up. I went up to my office, he came, he said, the Prime Minister is ready. Well, I was surprised, because most of you would have gone to see the Prime Minister knows that he usually keeps you waiting. You don't get to see him. It's as if he has to punish you. So you have to sit there a while before he sees you. He is never on time. A cavalier disregard for time is one of the characteristics of the Prime Minister. I was surprised. So when I called the gentleman and said, come in, and he said, no, the Prime Minister waiting. I was surprised, which meant he really wanted to see me, because I've never had so quick a response to be able to see him. And we went in and he asked me what was wrong. I said, Prime Minister, we are back in 93. He said, what? I said, the tension in the country, you can feel it. The only difference, we don't have the violence that you had, no bottle and stone. But the country was basically waiting for something to happen. Ask anybody what was the condition. You went into McKnight, there were people who were telling you, fellas, we know something have to happen, but you all let us get through the carnival. The tension was palpable in the country. And I said to the Prime Minister, well, what I just said, basically, we were back in the 93, save for the violence. He said, what was the way forward? I said, well, Prime Minister, you know, there are only two options. You resign and allow the party to continue, or basically you go into a general elections, which you will lose. The country had long lost confidence in Dr. Douglas before the motion of no confidence. I knew it, and the rest of the country knew it. The polls which was done by Peter Wickham of Barbados indicated to him that the country had long passed him. In fact, before that, in the last election, there was a Dr. Peters who came in and he advised Dr. Douglas that that had to be his last general elections. Because the country was basically weary of him. He told me he was at pains to explain to Dr. Douglas, it comes naturally as part of your long tenure. You will get the glory, you will get the blame. The people from England that he brought in, who eventually set up Lindsey Grant, told him in the cabinet that he had to say that was his last election, because when they polled, that was the message they were getting. And if you don't believe me, go back to July after the music festival, when we had a massive launch at Warner Park. One of the questions you will hear posed to him was when he was going to exit the office of the Prime Minister. You know why that came in? Because the pollster and the strategist figured it was a question that needed to be answered by him definitively. People had long lost it with Dr. Douglas. So I told him what the pollsters told us. Dr. Douglas, your time had ended. And if you were a good man, you would have basically gracefully go and let the government to get a new breath of fresh air. I never told Dr. Douglas I was interested, because I know Dr. Douglas had no love in his heart for me. I wasn't going to be so silly. Dr. Douglas is a person that uses people. Dr. Douglas, before that, had taken me to his office on Condor is here and told me the people of the party wanted me to be deputy and that I should take some position. He said that to Sam too one day in the week. And I told him, no, I couldn't accept it. I am not a person who just grab towards things. I am no fool. I know he was setting a trap. Because if he had been with Sam for 17 years and could so cavalier dispose of Sam, what would he do to me, who he had long seen as a threat to his continuing tenure? I was no fool. the canvas people in my constituency and say, the Prime Minister offer him a better position now. Let's see if he's not going to take it. Because he wanted to break solidarity between me and Sam. And then he left me alone to the wolves. And I started moving. And I told him, no. Sam knew that happened way back in May. This is the nature of the man you were talking about coming to say that I was interested. When I read what the facilitators said in 2007 that the deputy position had no meaning, why would I go to take that as a sensible man? It had no meaning. And if for a man who had been so loyal to him, that position had no meaning, what was I going to that for? Exactly. So I didn't get myself carried away. But I told him the facts. And maybe for the first time, somebody was brave enough to tell Dr. Douglas you had outlived your usefulness and you need to go. And I told him that. I told him you either would go gracefully or you're going to be forced into an election, which you will lose. The polls were saying to him that he would lose number 4. Now, and you only have to look at the mathematics. He had all 8 in 2000. Exactly. He went to 7th seat in 2004. He went to 6th seat in 2010. Every election, the Labour Party was losing seat. It was only a matter of time. So that reality, what I was telling him, was long overdue. But whatever it is he has to hide, I don't know. He could only survive as being Prime Minister. So this talk about Timothy Cody and Timothy wanted to be Prime Minister. In any event, did God will that to him? Exactly. Is there no one else in our country who can run our country well? Wouldn't it be a nice thing if you had been the leader of your country for 17 years to look among you and to find a young, energetic, intelligent man like Dr. Harris who had an interest in leadership? No, he doesn't want that. Dr. Douglas wants the position he now has in the Labour Party, where when you look around the back of them, you say, Lord, them they wouldn't do. Because he can now say, well, I have to run again, you know, because nobody else there. And you know why nobody else there? Because he knows when people look at Marcella Liebert, who hasn't really fulfilled a role as a champion for women in the country, or a champion for anything, they don't convince that she could lead the country. So it suits Dr. Douglas' purpose to have these yes men and yes women with him. When you look to Asim, can you see him ever asleep, being the Prime Minister of the country? He can't even put on a light. So that suits Dr. Douglas' purpose. When you look at Glenn Bowes, I mean, the rest of them, the better we don't talk. No disrespect to them. But that is the reality of the Labour team now. There is no leadership. So it gives Dr. Douglas a reason to say, well, I have to do it again. But isn't it a shame that after 18 years of pleading, he can't find among the group of people somebody to take over. So he says, I will have to continue again. Well, if you continue again with the same dead weight, 5 more years after that, you will still have to continue.
Yes.
Because if after 18 years, Asim not ready, by Dr. Douglas' own account that he has to stay, because Sam and Tim gone, so I can't give it to anybody, then that will always be a problem. Huh? We have long past that door, never to return. So basically that is it. I think the other issue that we try to raise, and again, it is really damaging to our country. The low level to which Dr. Douglas would stoop, to destroy people who have served with him so well. When I left as Minister of Finance, the country for the first time in 15, 16 years made a surplus. $146.9 million for the first time. Every year under Dr. Douglas's watch, we were in a deficit. And when Dr. Douglas removed me as Minister of Finance, the entire country was in gloom and said, Lord, man, everywhere he put you, you do well. And as soon as something starts to look good, he moves you. That had been the pattern. Put you in housing, you did well. Put you in agriculture, you did well. Put you in foreign affairs, you did well. Because that is a man who won 1 star in the movie. Yes. And the star must be him. Yes. That would be the problem. Rams came out and Kishu said, the best minister of finance in the country had been Timothy Harris. At least we knew what was happening. Every quarter I reported to the country because I appreciated that you had to take the country in your confidence. I appreciated that you couldn't have a debt as high as we had it and not communicated it to the people of the country. Because if you give people false expectation, their consumption patterns will not change. They will continue to expect you to deliver things which the state could no longer deliver. And I did that. And so Dr. Douglas, in an effort to undermine me, said, well, when I was there, I gave Rams some write-off of $50 million. That is what you're talking
Rubbish.
about. Nonsense and rubbish and hogwash. And intelligent people ought to know that no minister anywhere in our system can write any check.
I know.
No check can be written by me. It has to be written by people lower down, accountant general, a permanent secretary. Rams never came to me with anything in relation to their business. Dr. Douglas knows that he started a case in relation to a tax obligation from Rams. 2000 to 2004. He lost the case. Lost the case, cost the country $145,000 in first instance. A lady from Africa was the Solicitor General who took the case and lost. He brought in Cheltenham from Barbados, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Cheltenham said to him, you have no case against Rams. Rams had the business tied up the way he had it. You can't get no money. He brought in a gentleman, D-O-U-G, his name, from Canada, was giving tax advice. I have in my file the advice from him that the government needed as a matter of urgency to settle the case. He posed litigation risk, the risk that they had no case from and it raised the fact that the amount of money the government wanted to claim from Rams, it couldn't get based on the way Rams was organized. Rams brought Pete Marwick out of Barbados. And they said, listen, you all are crazy people. This thing here is a vendetta the Prime Minister had against Kishu, because Kishu said that I was the best Minister of Finance, and he must be the only star. Imagine right now Kishu lay in his deathbed and invested in our country long before my time. And the best the Prime Minister can do is to use the opportunity of a man dying, ill, catamouche for a while in his bed, to slander his name, all to get back at Timothy Harris over a nonsense. And I have there a copy, and I could show you. The case was pulled in February 2010 by Dr. Douglas. By that time, he was the Minister of Finance. I had nothing to do with that case. The Attorney General, the Inland Revenue Department were the people who were involved in negotiation, and in the end settled the matter. So again, my hands are clean. These things that Dr. Douglas says, intelligent people who know how government works, nobody can pass 50 or 40 or even 5 million to anybody. And listen, Dr. Douglas controls the security forces, and he has a legal branch. Any illegality can be checked and can be corrected. So if there was a case, lock up Rams, lock up Timothy. If there was a bribe, do that. Don't slander people's name without cause, without evidence. But it tells you our Prime Minister has gone to the lowest of low. He has no moral minimum. And he will stoop at anything to destroy anybody who he sees as a threat to his continuing leadership of the country. It is a shame, and it is a tragedy for us as citizens to see the lies and the depths to which our Prime Minister will go in order to maintain power. What it is he has to hide, could somebody tell me? What it is?
We're going to find out
these
soon.
things do not make sense. And intelligent people know you can't do those kind of things in government. And if it was done, he can correct it. Remember, he was my boss at all material times. And I know anything a subordinate does can reasonably be undone by the superior. So if he allowed a wrong to stay, it is a reflection on his poor quality of leadership, not mine. Not mine. I wouldn't do that. So I just want to give you that word in relation to that. I have nothing to hide in terms of my opinion. All he's doing is really mischief and trying to basically, by innuendo and falsehood, undermine people's confidence. But no weapons formed against me by Dr. Douglas shall prosper.
That's right.
His time has ended.
That's right.